They stopped calling him a veteran. They started calling him a fake. Marcus Rivas had lived in Red Creek for nearly 12 years. He fixed lawnmowers, changed spark plugs, replaced brake pads. He was quiet, polite, and always wore long sleeves. Even in summer, people said he kept to himself, but no one cared much. Until that video. It came from a local man, angry about a cancelled appointment. He posted a clip online claiming Marcus had lied about his military service. "No record," he sneered to the camera. "Not in the VA, not in any database. Stolen. Valor, plain and simple." Within a week, the video had over 300,000 views, and in a town like Red Creek, it might as well have been gospel. At the supermarket, people whispered. At the diner, waitresses avoided his booth. Even the pastor's wife, who once brought him pies on Veterans Day, now crossed the street with her grandkids. Through it all, Marcus said nothing, not a word, not even a look of defense. He simply opened his shop at 8, closed it at 5, and vanished into the house behind it. But that Friday morning, everything changed. The entire town had gathered at Red Creek High for the annual Spring Honors Assembly. The band played, kids wore medals, parents filled the bleachers, and just as Principal Halverson handed the final certificate to a smiling senior, the sky roared. A Black Hawk helicopter thundered into view and began descending onto the football field. Dust flew. Teachers screamed. Phones came out. And when the blades finally stopped, the door swung open. Out stepped a man in full military dress, chest full of ribbons, shoulders rigid with command. He took 2 steps, scanned the crowd, and bellowed through the speaker system, "Where is Marcus Rivas?" The video went viral. The trust vanished overnight, and Marcus felt the shift in every glance. At 7:45 a.m., Marcus unlocked the door to his shop like he had every weekday since 2011. The bell above the door chimed, the same tired note, the one he'd stopped hearing years ago. His coveralls smelled faintly of diesel and pine cleaner. He poured himself burnt coffee from a pot that never quite got scrubbed. Outside, the air was cool, the sky a soft grey. A morning made for quiet things, but Red Creek wasn't quiet anymore. A week ago, customers left their cars in the lot and came in for tune-ups or tire rotations without a second thought. Now, not one of the 6 pickup trucks parked outside belonged to clients. They were just there, watching or pretending not to. One of them had a phone held suspiciously still on the dash. The video had done its job. It showed a screenshot of an email, a records request with no reply, and a man's voice narrating, "This guy's been lying for years, says he was special forces, but guess what? He's not even in the system." There was no footage of Marcus speaking, no proof that he'd ever claimed anything, but in Red Creek, silence meant guilt, especially when it came with a beard, a limp, and a haunted stare. By 10 o'clock, the phone had rung twice. Both times, the caller hung up without saying anything. Marcus didn't bother calling back. Instead, he wiped his hands on a rag and stepped outside to sweep the sidewalk. Something to do, something normal. That's when the Thompson kids rode by on their bikes. The younger one, maybe 11, called out, "Stolen valor, asshole!" and threw a crumpled soda can toward his feet. Marcus didn't move, didn't flinch. He simply watched them pedal away, hearing their laughter fade down Elm Street. He turned back inside and shut the door. At noon, he skipped lunch. At 2, he found a red X spray-painted on the back wall of his garage, and at 4:30, he sat behind the counter staring at the clock, watching the second-hand tick. The worst part wasn't the name-calling or the spray paint or the eyes that followed him everywhere. It was the people who used to believe him, who used to shake his hand at the 4th of July picnic, or nod respectfully when he wore the battered grey cap with the faded unit patch, now pretending like he didn't exist, like he was a stain on the town they wished they could scrub out. As the sky darkened and the streets emptied, Marcus turned off the lights in the shop and locked the door. He walked the gravel path to his house behind the garage, shoulders stiff, face unreadable. Inside, he flicked on a single lamp and stood before a cabinet on the far wall. He opened it slowly. Inside, beneath folded clothes and yellowed manuals, sat a metal lockbox. He reached for it, hesitated, and then lifted it out, heavy with rust and memory. He placed it on the table, entered a 6-digit code, and waited for the latch to click. Inside, nestled between a folded flag and a small pistol, lay an envelope, untouched for over a decade. In black ink, faded but still legible, it read, "Do not open unless it happens again." In the garage, the world made sense. But even there, the lies began to leak in. The next morning came without fanfare, just the low hum of cicadas and the dull ache in Marcus's knees as he bent to lace his boots. Same black coffee, same stiff breeze through the cracked kitchen. Window? He left the lockbox unopened on the table. By 8, he was already under the hood of a '94 Chevy Silverado, elbows deep in oil and grime. Here, the engine still obeyed the laws of logic. A bolt turned the same way it always had. A carburetor was a carburetor, not a rumor, not an accusation. But even with his head bowed and his hands moving, Marcus could feel it. The weight of eyes through the garage's wide front window. A familiar shape stood just outside, Dale Humphrey, who used to bring his wife's Subaru in every other month. Marcus straightened and met the man's stare. Dale didn't speak. He just stood there, arms folded, chewing something. Maybe a toothpick, maybe just resentment, then turned and walked away without a word. The Silverado's owner never showed. By mid-morning, Marcus gave up pretending he was busy. He wiped his hands, hung up his rag, and went to the back room, a place of spare parts and silent years. On the shelf above the rusted battery chargers was another old friend, a wooden crate with a cracked lid. He pulled it down and pried it. Open inside, among wires and socket wrenches, lay something wrapped in canvas. A folded military-issue sat phone and a laminated code card, corners curled from age. He stared at them, unmoving. They were part of the deal, the silence, the off-the-books silence. He rewrapped the bundle and set it aside. That's when the bell above the garage door jingled. A tall man entered, not local, not familiar, clean-shaven, buttoned up, his boots too polished. He didn't look like a mechanic's customer. "You Marcus Rivas?" the man asked. Marcus didn't answer. The man smiled, faint and unfriendly. "Didn't think you'd talk, just wanted to see your face." He walked around the shop slowly, brushing fingers across. An old service poster looking at photos on the wall. One showed Marcus in younger days, standing beside a Humvee, arms slung over a buddy whose name only Marcus still remembered. "Nice place you've got," the man muttered, and then he left. No name, no purpose, no car to fix. Marcus followed him to the window and watched as the stranger climbed into a black SUV with no plates. At dusk, Marcus stood outside smoking. He hadn't smoked in years, but tonight it helped. The sun dipped behind the grain silos and left the town in shadow. Then, for the second time in 2 days, he returned to the lockbox. This time, he opened the envelope. Inside was a single scrap of paper, rough-edged, torn from something older, handwritten in sharp, precise lettering. "You cannot speak. You know why." Marcus stared at it for a long time. He didn't look surprised. Flags flew, brass bands played. The town cheered its heroes and left Marcus in the dust. The first Saturday in May brought clear skies and folding chairs lined along Main Street. The Red Creek Homecoming Parade was small-town America in full display. Streamers, candy tosses, marching bands, and a convertible for every local politician who remembered to wave. The parade always included a veteran's float. Always. It was tradition. A flatbed trailer draped in bunting with 7 or 8 men sitting stiff-backed in folding chairs, holding plastic American flags, nodding politely to the crowd. Most wore hats embroidered with unit numbers, some with old jackets that didn't quite zip anymore. Marcus stood 2 blocks away in the shade of his shop's awning. No chair, no flag, no welcome. He used to be on that float. 3 years ago, who called him up to ride beside Earl Middleton, a Korean War vet who'd gone mostly deaf. Marcus never spoke much then either, but he'd gone, held the flag, smiled once or twice. Now nobody even asked. He watched as the float rolled by and saw them. Men he remembered from the Legion Hall, one who used to cry when he drank. Another, who once confided he'd never deployed beyond Fort Leonard Wood. Marcus said nothing then. He said nothing now, but inside, something shifted. Not anger, not quite. More like a deep, stinging pinch in the place where trust used to live. A group of teenagers rode past on scooters, throwing candy into the crowd. One of them locked eyes with Marcus as he passed, then flicked a piece of gum onto the sidewalk near his feet. Just a smirk and a flick. He let it lie. The parade ended an hour later. Streets cleared slowly. Families went back to their lawns and barbecues. Marcus walked to the back of his garage, opened the rusted file cabinet he hadn't touched in years, and pulled out a letter. It was half written, or rather, barely started. "Dear Command," it began. "I know this violates protocol, but I can't stay silent anymore." The rest was crossed out, scratched so hard the pen tore the paper. He sat at his workbench, fingers resting on the letter. For a second he thought about finishing it, mailing it, letting someone else finally deal with the weight he'd carried for too long. But then he heard it, the whir of a drone. He stepped outside and looked up. There it was, a small quadcopter, hovering maybe 50 feet above the shop. Someone was filming him again. Marcus walked calmly back inside, slid the letter into the wood stove, and lit a match. As the paper curled into ash, the corners still visible read, "If I disappear, they'll assume it was suicide, but you and I will know better." She wanted an A on her school project. What she found was a locked door, a military file, and a secret someone tried to erase. Jenna Holloway didn't mean to get involved. She just wanted extra credit. Her civics teacher had assigned an oral history project. Interview a veteran from the community, capture their story, preserve it. She'd already planned to ask her grandfather. But when the whole Marcus Rivers fraud thing exploded online, something tugged at her. Maybe it was the way her dad talked about Marcus, spitting his name like a curse. Or maybe it was how the guy didn't talk. No denials, no outbursts, just that haunted stillness that stuck in your brain long after he walked past. So Jenna changed her mind. She picked Marcus. She showed up at his garage after school. Backpack slung over one shoulder, camera case in the other, sneakers squeaking on the concrete floor. He was under the hood of a Dodge. She cleared her throat. He didn't look up. "Mr. Rivas?" she said, voice too loud. Silence. "I'm doing a school project. I wanted to ask, well, I was hoping I could interview you." Marcus slowly emerged from the engine bay, wiped his hands on a rag and met her eyes. His expression didn't shift, not annoyed, not amused, just unreadable. "No," he said, then turned back to the car. Jenna stood frozen. I think people have the wrong idea about you," she blurted. He didn't answer. She left, cheeks burning, and nearly tripped over a lug nut on her way out. That night, at home, her dad noticed the camera missing from its shelf. "You better not be wasting your time on that guy," he said. "He lied to every person in this town." "He didn't lie to me," Jenna replied, and went to her room. Later, curled up on her bed, she searched. Again, deeper this time. No public records, no combat medals, no interviews, just forums, speculating, arguing, accusing. And then her school email pinged from unknownmaildrop.org. Subject, Operation Carbon Message, it wasn't a lie. Search beyond public access. Start with this. HTTPS, Dark Vault Millark Network Carbon Deal. The link didn't open. Access denied. Jenna stared at the screen, heart pounding. She copied the link into a note and tried again using the school's VPN. Nothing, but the words haunted her. It wasn't a lie. The next morning, she returned to Marcus's shop. She didn't bring a camera this time, just a folder of what? She'd found rumors of a classified task force, names blacked out in PDFs, one blurry photo of a man in desert camo, whose eyes looked a lot like Marcus's. He didn't let her in, but when she slipped the folder under his door and walked away, she didn't look back. Inside, Marcus stood frozen, staring down at a printout of the email she'd received. At the bottom of the page, in small bold font, it read, "File requested under ghost level clearance. Log attempt, May 7th, 3:44 p.m. Blocked." The town came for awards and applause. Instead, it got thunder, rotor wash, and a name shouted through a megaphone. The stands at Red Creek High were packed. Parents held sun-creased programs. Seniors in pressed gowns whispered nervously. The Spring Awards Assembly was a town-wide event, the kind of thing where everyone clapped for everyone, even if they didn't know what excellence in environmental science meant. Marcus Rivas was not supposed to be there, but he stood behind the bleachers, silent, half hidden by the shadows cast by the press box. Jenna had convinced him, not with arguments, not even with the folder, just with the question she left scrawled in the margin of a page. If you don't speak, who else gets erased? He hadn't answered, but he came. Principal Halverson, oblivious to anything outside the rows of shiny-faced honor students, was halfway through announcing the Civic Responsibility Award when the noise hit. It didn't start like thunder. It became thunder. At first, just a distant vibration, like a far-off storm or the heavy pulse of some invisible machine. Then louder, closer. Every head turned toward the sky. Phones went up like reflexes. Over the ridge, a Black Hawk helicopter appeared. It descended with mechanical grace, blades shrieking through the air, kicking up hats, papers, and screams of confusion. Children ducked. Faculty members shouted instructions. No one could hear. The aircraft touched down on the 50-yard line. The rotors slowed. The side door opened. Out stepped a man in full dress uniform. Medals precise, boots mirror-shined, posture perfect. He was older, mid-60s, but carved from command. Even before he spoke, his presence silenced the crowd. He didn't walk to the podium. He walked to center field, then turned and faced the audience. A microphone screeched to life, connected wirelessly through a speaker rig no one remembered installing. His voice filled the stadium like judgment. "Where is Marcus Rivas?" The crowd turned instinctively toward the source of their shame. Marcus didn't move. He stepped from behind the bleachers and walked slowly across the field. His limp was heavier today, but his back was straight. His sleeves rolled to his elbows. Whispers broke out. Gasps. A few people clapped, unsure why. The general's eyes narrowed. "Sergeant Rivas," he said as Marcus reached him, "you're a hard man to find." Marcus didn't answer. The general turned to the crowd. "You want the truth?" he said. "You want your damn explanation?" He pointed back toward Marcus. "This man is the reason some of your sons and daughters are still breathing." The stadium fell silent. The only sound was the ticking of the scoreboard clock. The general stepped forward, eyes sweeping across the stunned crowd. "He didn't lie," he growled. "We did." The general didn't just defend Marcus. He pulled back the curtain on a military secret buried so deep it was never supposed to see daylight. No one clapped, no one cheered. Even the phones lowered, slowly, like people weren't sure if they were supposed to be recording this anymore. General Hawthorne stood on the grass like a man with nothing left to lose. His chest rose and fell with slow, controlled breaths. His voice, though measured, carried the weight of an avalanche. "Sergeant, Marcus Rivas was part of Task Unit Echo 7, he said. A clandestine unit, code classified under Operation Carbon. You've never heard of it because you weren't supposed to." He paused. A few in the crowd exchanged glances, especially the older men, the ones who'd worn uniforms themselves. Their faces had gone pale. "It was black tier," Hawthorne continued. "No records, no flags, no pensions, just ghosts doing the jobs we didn't want to admit needed doing." Jenna sat frozen in the front row, her notebook clenched in her lap. She could feel her heart pounding in her ears. She looked around. People were shifting, murmuring, some shaking their heads, confused, angry, ashamed. Sergeant Rivas was one of our best, the general said, and one of the only survivors. Marcus remained quiet beside him, hands at his sides, staring straight ahead. Hawthorne turned, speaking directly to him now. "You saved my son," he said. "I never thanked you. I never even got to tell you. They made sure of that. But I remember every name on that manifest, and yours is at the top." Gasps spread across the stands. One woman, the wife of a retired colonel, covered her mouth with both hands. "Why didn't we know?" someone shouted. "Because we didn't want you to," Hawthorne replied flatly. "We wrote them out. Erased their files, told families they died in accidents, sent medals in plain boxes with no names attached, and we told these men—" He gestured toward Marcus. That silence was their duty. He turned back to the crowd, eyes sharp. "But silence is a convenient prison, isn't it?" The field was so quiet now. The hum of the helicopter's idle systems felt deafening. "Marcus Rivas didn't fake anything," the general said. "He was ordered to vanish. We failed him. I failed him." A ripple moved through the audience. Recognition, regret. But not yet forgiveness. And then Hawthorne reached into his jacket and pulled out a small red velvet box. He opened it. Inside was a medal. Not the standard bronze star, not the Purple Heart. This one was unfamiliar to most of the audience. Its ribbon was deep blue, the emblem silver and sharp. Presented under Executive Directive 47A, the general said, "For valor under sustained hostile engagement beyond declared jurisdiction." He handed it to Marcus. Marcus didn't take it. Not yet. He looked at the crowd, at the faces that had turned from him, at the ones that still looked away. His voice came low, steady. "I didn't ask you to believe me." He turned back to Hawthorne. "I asked you to leave me alone." And with that, he walked off the field, medal still in the box, crowd still in shock, and the truth now sitting heavily in every silence he left behind. Marcus finally breaks his silence and reveals why speaking sooner might have gotten people killed. The door to Marcus's garage creaked open just after sundown. He didn't flip the lights on. He didn't need to. Every wrench, every stain, every shadow, he knew them by feel. Jenna followed quietly behind him, carrying her backpack and her recorder, but for once, she didn't press the button. She waited. Let him speak first. "I was declared dead in 2009, Marcus said, his voice calm. "Kandahar province. Mission was scrubbed. IED hit our convoy, but that wasn't what killed us. What killed us was what came after." He leaned against the old metal workbench, hands gripping the edge. "They sent us in under Operation Carbon. High-value target extraction. A ghost stop. We weren't on the books. No backup, no air support. Just coordinates and a time window." Jenna leaned forward slightly. She didn't dare interrupt. "We got ambushed. 3 of us made it out of the compound. One of them bled out on the evac point. The other, he made it, but not with me." He reached for a flask he kept in the drawer, unscrewed it. "Didn't drink. I stayed behind, called it in. They told me to vanish, literally. Vanish, Rivas. No body, no trace." Said it was safer that way. For the program, for the families, for everyone. Jenna frowned. "But your name, your records, gone," he said. "Wiped, not even a service number anymore. They planted a fake file, let my mother think I died with full honors. Had a funeral without a casket." He chuckled once, humorless. "Closed casket makes a lot of lies easier to sell. She didn't know what to say. What could you say to a man who'd attended his own burial in silence? Marcus glanced at the folder she'd brought again. "You found more than you should have," he said. "And that login attempt you made, they flagged it." "Who's they?" she asked. He didn't answer directly, but he walked over to a dusty storage cabinet and pulled out a sealed envelope. The edges were brittle, the ink faded. He handed it to her. Inside was a photo, grainy, grayscale satellite capture, a compound, smoke, movement, and a sticky note stuck to the back. Rivas was bait. He was never meant to return. Jenna's eyes widened. "They used you," Marcus nodded. "They needed someone expendable, someone clean. No family, no paper trail. I was already a ghost in the system. They just finished the job." She looked at him, not like the rest of the town had looked. At him, not with fear or pity or curiosity, but with something else, a question still forming. "Why didn't you say anything?" Marcus met her eyes, steady. "Because I wasn't the only one they buried." He turned toward a rusted metal locker and opened it slowly. Inside were 6 ID tags, bundled with rubber bands. Not all of them were his. The truth wasn't just buried with Marcus. It was hidden to protect someone powerful, and that someone still walks free. The next morning, Jenna skipped school. She sat at her bedroom desk, blinds half closed, laptop open, fingers trembling, slightly on the keyboard. In front of her lay the bundle of dog tags Marcus had shown her. 6 names, no online records, no obituaries, no families willing to speak, ghosts, just like him. But one name stood out: Anthony J. Kessler. It rang a bell. She searched deeper, through old PDFs, archived newsletters, and a scanned yearbook from 1998. He was from Red Creek. Not just that, he was a classmate of her father's. She took a shaky breath and went downstairs. Her dad was in the kitchen, stirring sugar into his coffee, already in uniform for his city council meeting. "You're up early," he said. "Did you know a man named Anthony Kessler?" she asked directly. The spoon stopped mid-stir, a subtle shift in his face. Not surprise, recognition, caution. "Yeah, long time ago." "Why?" She held up her phone. Photo of the dog tag glaring back at him. "He was in Marcus's unit. He died in that mission. Only, officially, he never existed." Her dad set the mug down slowly. "Where did you get that?" Jenna didn't answer. He sighed. "Jenna, things are complicated. Kessler, he wasn't just a soldier. He was involved in something high level, dangerous, the kind of thing that gets buried for a reason." "Did you know what they did to Marcus?" she asked. "You knew he was telling the truth." He didn't speak right away. Then, "I knew. Enough to stay quiet." Her voice shook. "Why would you let everyone treat him like a liar?" "Because I have a mortgage, a job, 2 kids, and a wife who trusts me to keep them safe," he said, colder than she'd ever heard him. "You think this town would forgive me for defending someone they decided to hate?" Jenna stepped back, stunned, but he wasn't done. "And if you dig any deeper into this, they won't go after Marcus. They'll come after you. You understand me?" She nodded, not in agreement, but because she suddenly understood far more than she wanted to. That afternoon, she returned to the garage. Marcus was waiting, seated by the open bay door, watching dust dance in the sunbeams. She sat beside him. "Anthony Kessler," she said. "He was the son of Senator Robert Kessler." Marcus nodded slowly. "Now you're starting to see it." "The operation wasn't just secret," she continued. "It was a cleanup job. They left you behind to protect someone's political career." He didn't argue. "And you kept quiet." "To protect the families of the others," she said, "so their kids wouldn't have to know they were sacrificed." He exhaled, the sound dry and bitter. "I kept quiet because I believed the country was worth it." Jenna turned to him. Do you still believe that? Marcus looked out across the field where the parade had marched just days ago. No, he said, but I believe truth is. Marcus doesn't ask for justice. He asks for something harder, for the truth to live outside of him. And then he disappears one last time. The gym at Red Creek High was full again. Not for a ceremony, not for an awards assembly, but for something nobody could quite name. Jenna had asked the principal for the space, said it was for her school project. But word spread fast. By sunset, the bleachers were packed. Marcus stood at center court. No stage, no microphone, just him. And the box he hadn't accepted, the one with the unawarded medal, resting quietly at his feet. He wore no uniform, no badges, no symbols, just jeans, a flannel shirt, and that same limp that had followed him for years. Jenna sat in the front row, recording. "I don't have a speech," Marcus began. "Never been good with words. No one laughed, no one dared. I didn't come to clear my name," he said. "Most of you already decided what you believe. That's fine." He looked around, some eyes lowered, some held his gaze. "I came because a girl half my age asked me a question no one else ever thought to." He turned slightly toward Jenna. "She asked if I was the only one they buried." He let the silence stretch. "I wasn't." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the dog tags, all 6. The metal clinked softly as he held them up. "These are the names of men you'll never see in a history book, not because they didn't matter, but because someone decided their deaths were inconvenient." He set the tags gently on the floor beside the box. "They were real. I was real. And we were used." The crowd didn't shift, didn't breathe too loudly. I stayed, silent, because I believed in something bigger than myself. And I still do. But that something, it's not the army or the flag or the people who sit in tall buildings making decisions for men like me. He looked at the tags again. "It's this." He tapped the center of his chest, right above the heart. "Truth doesn't need a badge. It needs a witness." He stepped back, picked up the box and placed it next to the tags. Then he turned and walked off the court. No one clapped. Not out of disrespect, but because something sacred had just happened. And they knew it. The next morning, the garage was empty, door unlocked, tools neatly arranged, workbench cleared. Only the lockbox remained, sitting quietly on the counter, lid open, envelope gone. Inside, a small note in block letters. "I was never supposed to come back, so I won't. Not again." No one saw Marcus leave Red Creek, but for the first time they were finally looking for the right man. If this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Hit subscribe, leave a comment, and share your voice. Where in the world are you watching from? And what moment in this story hit you the hardest? We'd love to hear your thoughts, your memories, your truths. Because stories like this only live on when you help tell them.